We're going to talk about the Price Book Center today because the Price Book is important to many different areas of your program: the billing, job costing, estimating, purchasing, inventory tracking. So I'm going to go into the Price Book Center, which is located on the Job Master Pro main menu. I'm going to click the Price Book Center button. And when we come into the price book, we can see that the first item in the price book is displayed. I'm going to bring up an actual material item and go through this screen real quickly, talk about the main fields, the tabs, some of the main tabs, what you can do in some of these areas. And keep in mind that a lot of what I'm going to talk about, you can get even more information about it, the tab or the field or whatever, in subsequent lessons. But when we look at a single item in the price book, you can see it begins with an item number, which is very simply a unique identifier for the item. It is the quickest way to find an item in the price book, but as you're going to see, you rarely need to know the item number because there are about 9 different ways you can find items in the price book. The description of the item can come from a price updating service, one of your suppliers. It can come from one of our pre-built price books. This happens to be a pre-built electrical price book. The product group is used for organizing like items together in your price book. So for example, all my EMT items are under one product group. My wire might be broken out into a couple of different product groups so that I can organize my price book by groups of items. I can make mass changes by groups of items, as you can see in a subsequent lesson. The EMT, or the recall name here, is just a generic name for the item. In this case, we have EMT, so that whenever I want to find EMT items in my price book, I can just look and select EMT in my price book lookup window. The vendor model is a field that you can use for looking up items as well. You could store the actual vendor model number for the item, so those of you who are in plumbing or HVAC and you want to be able to find the item by model number, that kind of thing, that can be stored in the vendor model fields. The bin location field is simply a location where in your main warehouse where you would normally find this item. So later on, after you have the system up and running and you want to tackle inventory setup, you can set bin locations to indicate where you would normally find this item. That will also print out on bin labels. Now the vendor ID is an important field in that if you have a supplier or multiple suppliers updating the costs for different items in your price book, this tells COBRA which update service is going to be updating the cost for this item particularly. So you'll see more about that in the update services later on. Now the vendor part field is an important field too because it does several things. First of all, you can search on it, and my example here is if you have multiple vendors that you buy this from and you want to be able to search on this item by multiple vendor catalog numbers, you can put all of them in here and as you'll see later on, be able to search on any part of that vendor part field. The trade number is primarily used in conjunction with a price update service, but you can also find items by the trade number. So the trade number is our generic name. It could be a catalog number, a UPC number for the item. Just depends on how your supplier has cataloged this item. It is used in conjunction with the price update service, as I mentioned. So whenever you get a file for updating costs in your price book, the update service will match these two numbers, both in your price book and in their update file, to know to update this cost for this item in the price book. Now, in conjunction with price update services like Trade Service and Epic and some of the suppliers who send out the same generic catalog costs out to everybody, you can bring those costs down to a more local level by using these discount percentages, and those also can be set by product group. So for example, all of your EMT, if you want all of those costs to come down by say 10% off of your price update service, then that can be set in the price book. Now I'm going to go down to the General tab and talk about this information because the price book is used by many different areas of the program. Obviously, the billing program, the job costing is automated, the estimating part of the system, and the inventory tracking too. So I'll go through these very briefly. Your cost ends up being then what you normally pay for this item. It's considered more of a T&M cost, more for service work. Okay, so when you're doing service work and you want to charge a customer for half-inch EMT, this would be the normal cost coming out of the price book. So it can come from your supplier, or it can be maintained manually or using some of our tools within Cobra. The regular markup becomes what you normally want to mark this item up. So we call it a regular markup for a reason, because as you'll see in a moment, you can also have different price codes to set column pricing to your different customers, and you'll see that in a moment. So your regular price becomes what you normally want to charge for this item. The labor unit is simply a measure of time that it takes to install 1 unit of this item. And the estimating program uses that to calculate out the total time needed to do a bid job. The estimating cost, as you see, we carry that separate from your billing cost, because we know that when you do a bid job, you can normally buy better for bid jobs, so you can maintain a separate estimating cost from your billing cost. And the purchase order program too, by the way, will use that when you want to purchase for bid jobs. Now, the inventory information, keep in mind, you don't even want to think about inventory until you have this rest of the system up and running and you're ready to just focus on inventory. Because what Cobra allows you to do is select the specific items in the price book that you want to track in inventory. And simply by setting the reorder level here at anything greater than 0, then Cobra knows that you want to track the on-hand quantity for that item. So that's how Cobra does that, is it knows that this item we want to track in inventory, and this is how much we currently have on hand. Then whenever the on-hand quantity gets below the reorder level, Cobra will trigger you on screen that you must handle the reordering or replenishing of this item in your inventory, which can be automated through the purchase order program. One other note about inventory that you will also hear me talk about later on is the fact that we reduce the on-hand quantity immediately when the item is posted to the job, not when the item is billed out, because that's not real time. So with our inventory, we're always trying to keep things very real time. And you'll learn more about inventory setup and inventory tracking in the lesson on setting up and tracking your inventory. So I'm going to go into some of these main tabs here and talk about some of the features that you can think about. Maybe you never thought about some of these features. Maybe you'd like to put into use some of these features that are available in here. Now, you can carry multiple costs for a single item in your price book, and you'll see a lesson on setting this up in a subsequent lesson if you're interested in doing this. But what's nice about this is that if you do buy the item from multiple vendors, then the costs from these multiple vendors can be tracked and updated through the update services that also update your main costs that you're carrying. You don't even want to think about setting up your cost codes, though, until you're ready to think about this. In other words, get the system up and running. Same thing with inventory. Get the system up and running. Then start taking advantage of some of these features. Same thing with price codes. Just like your suppliers have multiple pricing columns to you guys based on volume and purchase history, you can do the same thing with your price book. So what Cobra allows you to do is to set up these price codes, which are just simply percentages up or down to adjust the main markup for the item over here, up or down by these percentages to create column pricing for your customers. So whenever you see the word price codes, like when you're setting up a customer or setting up a job, you know that you can select a different price code to price out a customer's jobs with. Now the system is fully barcoded, so this barcode can print out on bin labels and on field sheets, and you'll see more about that in the lesson on barcoding. And I'm going to skip over to the price history tab because I want to talk a little bit about price history. Price history can be automated two ways. First of all, when you're using the purchase order program with Cobra and you receive these items from your supplier, Cobra automatically gives you price history or creates a record in this tab for you so that you can tell vendor by vendor, item by item, and by date how much you paid for the item and even how much you had to buy to get the cost that you paid for that, and even the purchase order. Now, if you're not using Cobra's purchase order program, you do have the ability to track price history, but you have to manually set that up in the quote price history screen. Item usage, the last tab here, is a very important window, I guess, because it allows you to see item by item how much you used of that item during the year, and we separate it out month by month. So those of you who are in the, say, the HVAC industry in particular, you want to be able to plan your purchase history based on past item usage. You can come into this tab and see month by month how much you normally purchase for that item. And there are also reports on item usage, so there are many different ways of getting the information on item usage. But a key about this too, though, is that if you wanted to look at last year and find out how much you purchased last year, you can simply double click on the Cobra date and set it to last year. I'm just clicking on the year here, bring it down to 2004 for a moment. And then when I go out of this tab and back into the tab, it resets it with 2004's information. So that's how you can trigger the item usage to go year by year. So I'll reset that to this year. Now, lastly, there are some other nice features available in the Pricebook Center that you may not be aware of. And that is using the F5 key to kind of look up all the items that have the value in it. In other words, I'm in the product group field and I have this product group here and I want to know what are all the items in this product group. When I have this product group displayed and I press F5, I can get a list of all of those items in the price book. So that if I wanted to kind of start working on customizing different groups, this is one way of doing it, because I can see all the costs. I can resort my little list. So if I wanted to, enter markups for costs from $0 to $1 or $1 to $5, $5 to $10, like that, you can resort these columns, especially the cost column, to do that kind of thing. Now, the main thing about this is that you can perform multiple functions, as you can see here at the right, at the same time for selected groups of items. So if you wanted to select all items in this display, I click on the Select All button, I can perform a bunch of different functions all at the same time, like setting recall names or setting markups for groups of items by selecting as many of these update options as I want to. And then when I click Save, Cobra would go through and make the changes to all the selected items that you've selected the update options for. But you could also just select groups of items that you want to make some of these changes to, and just continue working in this one screen, making all the changes that you want to all at the same time for these groups of items. Pretty neat. But do use this F5 key to search for items in the price book, especially when you're first starting out and you want to get to know your price book a little bit, what's in these groups of items, and use these update options to work with your price book. Very effective, very efficient, very quick. So that ends the lesson, or the overview, I should say, on the Pricebook Center.